Mining is only going to grow. Because now we're looking for solar panels that need lithium and that need a lot of minerals to work. So we'll have to try to reduce the consumption. We have to reduce consumption as much as possible. Offer opportunities of development and well-being in an equitable manner. It's a product that's highly valued in the market. It's durable, reusable, repairable, compostable when it finishes its life cycle, and it improves the quality of its ecosystems and its production processes. While we do all these steps, while we work with the alpaca and with all the productive process, we not only reduce the damage, but this process and human relationships will also regenerate the ecosystem. These are the conditions that the AII has proposed to get or to propose that we all function under this logic. So to obtain all this, and following this logic, we've created, these are 6 objectives. These first objectives are the objectives that we really want, and they go together with a social, economic, and environmental aspect. Environmental regeneration, not reduce impact, but regenerate the surroundings. Social strengthening, well-being, and high positioning product in the market, which is what we want, what we're working towards. And then we have 2 other objectives, which are a bit more of how we get all this. We have to do measurements. Markets ask us to measure things, sometimes in a completely unnecessary way. Sometimes we're asked to measure things that cannot be measured. But anyway, while we can, we do measure it. We're going to see until what point we have to measure transparency. We're going to need to know all our value chain and what's happening downstreams once we sell our products. And collaboration, that's obvious. That's a repeated word. We're not going to be able to do this if we don't do it together. From my point of view, and seeing other chains, we need a lot of articulation still. But I keep on thinking that the alpaca sector, having seen other textile sectors in the country, has a lot more collaboration, because there's always criticism, no? Yes. But they do collaborate more than the others. So this area of strategic objective looks for what? It's seeking to regenerate environmental while we operate, aligning with international agreements regarding climate change to do the battle against this, offering resources to mitigate and adapt ourselves to the climate change, especially the communities. We from the city have it closer. We have communities with serious problems of droughts, lack of food, and deaths, abortions of alpacas because of all this. So we need measures to mitigate and regenerate, but also to help all of ourselves to adapt ourselves to the changes that are coming to all of us. On behalf of strengthening socialists, promoting personal, social, and cultural development of people, promoting and conserving the intangible and tangible heritage of the communities, and high positioning, we want alpaca fiber with premium option aligned to the attributes of sustainability regarding the preferences of the client, offering quick, trustworthy, and opportune information when it is required to back up any declaration. Its position has to be aligned to the needs of the client, but very well communicated so it can be appealing to their necessities and offering trustworthy information and quick information. Many times it's difficult for a person, a company that's selling to the client, to an international retailer, that they can obtain information. The retailer asks the seller something, And it's not possible to get the information quickly from the chain. That's a challenge, and it needs more integration. Integration of the capacity of fluid communication. Then we go towards a measurement, and this is to get complete scientific information to back up the making of decisions that we decide to make, and also we can communicate in a trustworthy way to be aligned. Offer quick, trustworthy information to be able to have, and be able to have this, we have to be able to measure and answer quickly. And then we need to have a transparent value chain which complies with the legislation, and now we're going to have a talk on the legislations. We have very dark points in the chain, and we know that. We don't know parts. There are blind points, especially in the intermediary section. These are risks that are very high, and it's not just for scandals. Now these are risks, legislation risks for Europe, and there are multiples. And then finally, create synergies and boost development of solutions in a participative and equitable way. This is one of the pillars of the association, or of any association. Create synergies between the associates and with the rest of the entities. This is a problem. Are you thinking how pretty, how nice? And the money, where does that come from? Where does it come from? From here, right? We have to take money out of our pockets, definitely, for the well-being of the Alpaca, of everyone, of the sector. But what AI has been doing, and everyone, is work in alliances. They're going to tell us afterwards how they're working towards these life cycles. But we already can see some progress that has been done. Introduction of RAS certification. This was done with textile exchange, talking and discussing. And right now, many of the companies contributing towards certifying part of the chain in benefit of others. And getting together with other natural fibers to work jointly to be able to promote the value of natural fibers and of alpaca itself. And Alpaca has shown a very strong leadership in these alliances from the first edition. And then we're going to have also another talk. They're going to speak a bit more about this logic of measurement and transparency, which we need so much. The Boco University, Alpaca, Mitchell, and Clamsack, we hope they get together more, and more companies get together with this. They're doing this analysis of life cycle to obtain trustworthy data to transmit to the client, but also to make decisions which are robust and firm. We're not going to go towards something which seems important, but it's not going to have the impact that we need. What do we need so that this strategy functions? Constant retro feedback. I've told someone, I want people to think what's missing from what I have to tell you. And I want you to come forth to the IAA or to me and tell us, because this is, we have to have a first draft to go incorporating more and more visions and have feedback, no saying, no, this isn't okay, this project makes no sense. Or if maybe it's positive, yes, I want to join you. Who else? This is the idea. We should all know. I'm going to send you the link how you can get to know more about this. I'm very open. If you want me to go to any organization, I can go, I can talk to you, we can have feedback. Just get in contact with me, that we all use it as reference. Okay, what's going to be our following step? How do we want to face this? A project is coming up, there are opportunities of a client for a certain thing. With who else can we get together to do this? That happens. A client comes and says, oh, look, I want to help. I want to help. So they can go to AI and say, this project line, who's doing something which I can contribute with a client here? It's not usual just to work for our own company. Our logo is something that has to go out. But nothing happens if many more also come out. And finally, we all have to implicate us. We all have to get involved here. Don't look at it as a strategy of the AI. You have to understand this as the beginning of a strategy for the alpaca of Peru. This is the idea. This is the spirit. And here you can download. I want you to tell me if this works, and you try, please, to see if it works. I want to wait and see if it actually works. Good. So this works. Here's my mail, and the mail from AIA. Or if you want to contact me directly, that would be fine. So, nothing else? I don't know if you have any question, or the questions can come up after us with the roundtable. Thank you very much. Never. The presenters have never made it easier for me. The timing is perfect. I want to ask Honor Cohen. He's director of Anthesis Group from the USA. And she has a second topic that's this second topic. She's going to be in charge of talking about laws related to sustainability and circularity in the fine hair textile sector. Please.
Okay, does this work? Great. I've got my laptop here.
Tengo mi laptop acá. Voy a estar un poco vulnerable. Subí a 4.200 metros ayer del nivel del mar, unas cuantas horas antes.
So I'm a bit wobbly today, but we're going to give it our best shot. Okay. Just a bit about who I am first. Who's this white woman on stage? Let's give her some credentials. So I come from a sustainability consultancy called Anthesis. We are global, sorry, got to get this direction right. I joined 11 years ago when it was first formed. There were 30 people. It is now 1,500 people worldwide. We only work in sustainability. So we're looking at embedding sustainability practices across E, S, and G, across multiple different sectors. And hopefully making the world a little bit of a better place. Who knows? Trying our hardest. I head up the apparel and retail work that we do globally. It's a big passion of mine. I'm really delighted to be able to speak with you all today. On the right-hand side are some of the brands and retailers that we work with. A lot of them are in the luxury apparel sector, in the outdoor industry too. So by proxy, kind of have the voice of the brand and the retail sector. So great to talk to those further up the supply chain today. We're also part of some industry bodies. We never want to work alone. This is a collaborative effort. We're trying to solve some big ecological crises here. So Textile Exchange, who I believe are coming to talk on Friday. Cascale, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, also members of them. Okay, now into the legislative bit. If anyone falls asleep, I have failed. I'm going to try and make this more fun than it is, but bear with me. Okay, oh yeah, and very important, I'm not a lawyer. This is a snapshot in time of what these is being said by these various different laws and bills. Subject to change, timelines could change, threshold for who is required to report could change, but I'm going to give you the current information that's out there, essentially. Stepping back a little bit, this is the main trend that we're seeing in sustainability, and likely those in the room are also feeling it a little bit. We're going from a voluntary sustainability reporting world into a mandatory sustainability reporting world. So the sustainability industry loves acronyms, of course. Things like CDP, Carbon Disclosure Project, that's an annual voluntary survey where companies are requested to report on greenhouse gas emissions, on targets and progress against those targets. HIG, something you might have heard about, that came out of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. Again, it's a voluntary survey that's sent out annually. It covers topics such as pollution, such as waste management, air pollution, carbon emissions. I did actually check in with them. There are 15 companies in Peru in the alpaca industry that are already reporting to HIG already, so it might be familiar to some of you in the room. ESG reports, so a lot of the brands and retailers are sending out these reports to demonstrate the progress that they're already making on environmental, social, governance topics. But because of the pressures that we're getting in the whole industry, in the whole world, wanting to hold accountable those are the ones that are polluting most and emitting most and being bad. Can I say that? Being bad. We're moving from the nice to do on the left-hand side into this mandatory one where things are becoming law. We've got more investor pressure. We've got more risk to the brands when things go wrong in supply chains and things are uncovered. The consequences and penalties of the mandatory reporting is actually akin to financial reporting. So there's a lot of very panicked brands and retailers in the world right now that are worried about the implications of not complying with these laws that are coming into play. I am going to mention a couple of legislations today. So CSRD, CS-DDD as it's known. There are lots of others out there that are all coming down the line. A lot of them have not been put into action yet. So the ones that have been put into action are the ones I want to talk about. You might have heard in the US, for example, there's an SEC ruling on climate disclosure that's requiring all the big companies in the US to report on carbon emissions. Just last week, California put into action the SB 707, which is the textile EPR law, the extended producer responsibility. So in essence, any producers of textiles and apparel in California have to set up a producer responsibility organization to enhance recycling and reuse of textiles. So that's a first for America and for that industry. So there's lots more coming down the line. There's Japan, China is also bringing in legislation, but it's not quite yet law by the word. Okay. All right, let's dive in. If there's one slide that you want to take a picture of in this presentation, it's not that one, it's this one. This is a nice overview of what's happening in the EU. So on the left-hand side, you can see the EU Green Deal, the EU Green Taxonomy. These are known as principles, under which sit pillars, more pillars, and then we get to the legislative actual framework that I'll be talking about some of these today. So these are more detailed guidelines, in essence. They haven't written everything into law about exactly what you're required to report on yet. There's lots of acts underneath these frameworks which are still being put in and discussed and put into action. On the right-hand side, you can see the themes that these frameworks are aiming to get at and what they are trying to push through. So you've got anything from the extended producer responsibility schemes through to prevention of greenwashing, and then down to the reporting, which we'll get into. Okay, honing in on these two is what we'll be doing in a second. I did also want to mention the ESPR, which is the third one down in the middle there. That's the Eco Design for Sustainable Products Regulation. Just a few words on the matter, because it is still being worked out exactly what is required under it. So starting from 2025 through to 2027, all products on the EU market must fully comply with ESPR. There's a creation of what's called Product Footprint Environmental Category Rules, what a mouthful, PEFCR, which will dictate what reporting and data requirements are required for the textile product category. We don't know yet what those are. We do know they will focus on greenhouse gas emissions, on water use, on resource depletion. Once the PEFCR is defined, there will be a requirement for digital product passports, and that will be mandatory by 2027. So any product that goes into the EU market will have to have a passport on it that says this is where this came from and these are the environmental impacts of that product. Unfortunately, this is not a fire drill. It's just a matter of time. Don't shoot the messenger either, please. So some more acronyms in the sustainability world. CSDDD, CSRD. What do they mean? Okay, let's take CSRDD first, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. The key is the due diligence part. So there's a requirement to assess, prevent, and mitigate adverse impacts on human rights, including labor rights, and environmental standards. This includes holding corporations legally accountable for violations in their supply chain, all the way up to the very top of the supply chain. CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, requires large companies operating in the EU and also outside of the EU to disclose detailed information about how they manage social and environmental risks, including those in the supply chain. So you can see there's a bit of overlap, but one's really the emphasis on due diligence, the daily actions of a particular company, and the other one's is reporting that out and talking about progress. For each of these, there are thresholds. Of course, they're slightly different because, legislation, that determine whether a company is required to disclose and on what time frame. So those with the biggest revenues in the EU and the highest number of full-time employees will be required to disclose as early as 2025, next year, on 2024 data. All required companies that meet these thresholds will need to report by 2027 on 26 data. So it's coming down the line fast, essentially. Oh, wait. Yeah, okay. This is a quote from someone that was helping set up the CSRD. So it actually spawned, in part, not solely, from the Rana Plaza tragedy. And as you're all in the apparel industry, I'm sure you're aware of the tragedy in Bangladesh over a decade ago, where a number of hundreds of employees were killed in a fire at a factory. And the idea behind CSRD, CSDDD, is really to hold accountable those companies that are requiring product to be made and how it's made. So that's the desire, that's the intention behind it. Okay, so if we look at the topics that are included in CSDDD and CSRD, there's a lot of overlap, so I put them on one slide, but I think we can all agree this is a lovely list of human rights that make sense and we would not like to see in any of our supply chains. And these are the environmental ones. Again, these are very standard at this point in terms of metrics that companies' products are assessed on in terms of their environmental impact. Climate change, biodiversity loss, resource use, etc., etc. So there's a lot of overlap there. What are the consequences of non-compliance? Don't worry, it's unlikely that anyone in this room is going to suffer from these consequences, but this is what's keeping the brands and retailers up at night. So if the EU companies that meet the threshold and are reporting on CSRD and CSDDD don't meet what they're required to do, there are penalties. Each of the member states in the EU can decide the penalties depending on which country the penalty has been has happened in, but they must be effective, proportionate, and dissuasive. That's a quote. The highest penalty will be at least 5% of the company's net worldwide turnover in the previous financial year. That's a lot of money for some of these companies. So, again, this is why it's keeping them up at night. There is the threat of civil liability, litigation. Member states are responsible for setting up mechanisms to enable victims to trigger civil liability in case of damages to compensate for harm caused intentionally or through negligence. So this is where grievance mechanisms are really, really important to understand where issues are in the supply chain, what they are, how big they are, and the company has to be seen to be addressing them. And then finally, public contracts, so governmental contracts, for example. If a company is not compliant with CSDDD, then they might not be able to access those public contracts. So there's a potential loss of potential income and economic impact here. Okay, I've done my best to apply some of these principles of CSRD and CSDDD to the alpaca industry. I'm not the expert. You in the room are all experts. But I do want to share with you what is going to happen at a high level and to maybe help inspire what we need to do together to tackle what's coming down the line. So, in terms of what happens next, 3 bullet points here. Supply chain scrutiny will increase. We've just been talking about that. So Peruvian exporters will be expected to provide European buyers with sustainability-related data. Alpaca farmers, breeders, textile producers will also face increased pressure to comply with sustainable practices and report on these. From a human rights and labor standards point of view, companies will be required to comply with international labor standards, such as fair wages, safe working conditions, even in rural alpaca farming. Grievance mechanisms will need to be in place up and down the supply chain. This is a summary of what I've been talking about, but good to have it on one page. And potential consequences of non-compliance could include losing access to European markets, facing legal repercussions, potentially. I think that's less of a threat, but I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I didn't mention it. And finally, environmental sustainability. Environmental practices, natural resource management, water management, protecting biodiversity, showing that, demonstrating that. These are things that are already being worked on by the industry. We've had a number of talks this morning already, this afternoon, about all the great work that's already being done, but this needs to be shown and demonstrated, unfortunately. Some challenges. You could probably all add another 10 challenges to this. Not trying to tell you, but these are ones that particularly are really headwinds, potentially, for what's coming down the line in terms of CSRD and CSDDD. Limited resources for small farmers. Obviously, a lot of the Peruvian alpaca farms are small, family-run, family-owned businesses. Limited access to technology. They're high up in the mountains. And so the resources required to meet some of these reporting standards is going to be a challenge. Knowledge and capacity gaps. Understanding all of this is hard, it's complicated. If you've ever looked at the legislation for CSDDD, CSRD, it's 90 pages of legal shit. Can I say that? How did that translate? I'm curious. It's a lot of legal jargon, and sometimes laws are intentionally written to make it sound more complicated than it is. So there's an education piece, there's a capacity building piece for those that are involved in industry and the supply chain to understand what's being requested of them, myself included. Traceability of products. So this will become critical. You know, we talked about digital product passports previously, but it's also relevant to CSRD, to CSDDD. Showing, demonstrating where product is being made, how it's being made, how the fibers are being processed is going to be of more importance. Essentially trying to provide brands and retailers with the confidence and the data to show what they already know about what you guys all are up to. I want to talk about some positives, because I think there might be some positives coming out of this. So, enhancing global competitiveness. Hopefully, these will open some new opportunities in Europe's sustainable luxury market. Consumers are willing and should continue to show willing to pay a premium for environmentally and socially responsible products. And that should, of course, flow up the supply chain. There is a unique selling position for alpaca, of course. The way that it is, the way the alpacas are bred is a really powerful storytelling message, but we just need to fill in the gaps with the data and the evidence for how the alpaca industry is meeting standards. Adoption of sustainable practices. Of course, we want alpaca to be made in the most sustainable way. Where that's not already happening, because I've heard a lot already about where this is happening, but regenerative farming techniques, etc., will enhance the reputation of the Peruvian alpaca industry outside of the border of Peru. Natural dyeing, efficient water-efficient processes, sustainable sustainable animal husbandry can position alpaca as a leader in sustainable fashion. I believe that for sure. I'm sure you will do too. Collaboration. This is a perfect opportunity for those kind of collaborations and talks to be happening. There is a whole ecosystem of businesses that are sitting behind these legislations. There's the lawyers, there's the auditors, the PwCs and the EYs that are looking at all the data and scrutinizing it. There's the consultants like myself, there's you, there's others in the supply chain, there's the retailers and brands. We all need to be having a conversation about this, because this shouldn't just be a top-down, we need you to do this, we need all of your data. This should be an opportunity to have a discussion for some understanding about the complexity and the nature, particularly of Peruvian alpaca and how it is, and this is extended also to fine hair textiles as well, but how it is farmed and produced. All right, some suggestions to take forward, but I'd love to hear from you. Maybe we will later in the round table. Educating stakeholders and getting ahead of the game. I just talked about the whole ecosystem of stakeholders that we need to bring online here and have these discussions with. Really, really key. Workshops, training sessions, collaborations, absolutely vital. The work that Esther was just been talking about, and the strategy there and implementing that is going to be crucial, really supportive of CSRD and CSDDD. I did want to highlight here, in case anyone wasn't aware, there have now been figures for fair wages in Peru released on wageindicator.org. There's a differentiation between urban and rural environments. So that's interesting in that there is now more data being shared about what is reasonable within supply chains and what supply chains can expect in terms of some of the social labor indicators, metrics, like fair wages, for example. Strengthening partnerships with European buyers. Obviously easier said than done. But having those conversations, being open about this is where the Peruvian industry is at, this is what we are working on, this is the realities of the situation, these are our headwinds, these are our tailwinds, should hopefully support what the brands and retailers are looking for, and at least getting on the same table, I think, is key. Certification programs. We all know about the Responsible Alpaca certification scheme from Textile Exchange. That is a great way to demonstrate some of the good data and sustainability credentials coming out of the alpaca industry already. In terms of other data collection mechanisms, I mentioned the Higg Index earlier on. That is something to look into because it's a standardized format. It also asks all the questions that CSRD and CSDDD are likely to be asking of the brands and the retailers. So you can support your brand and retailer by completing that form on an annual basis. Just wanted to end on a positive note because we talked about the intention of CSRD, CSDDD. This is the intention. A high tide will raise all boats. The impact of this legislation is still to be seen. We will see the first realities of it coming in 2025 on 2024 data, as mentioned previously. And I think there's a lot of trepidation about what it actually means and the implications in terms of time, effort, money that's being put into sustainability efforts and initiatives. But keeping this in mind potentially might be a little bit helpful. Thank you very much.
We're going to continue with second part of the forum, of the academic forum inside Alpaca Fiesta. We're going to talk now about sustainable trends in the value chain of the alpaca, and Guido Chirenos, who's director of CITE Textile Cameles in Arequipa. He's going to come and give the talk. Good afternoon, everyone. For me, it's a pleasure to be here among you and be able to let you know a bit about my experience in the textile sector of the alpaca industry. I remember when I was 21 or 20 years old, I used to work in Inca Alpaca. And I used to say, why don't they take me to Alpaca Fiesta? And it's because only some of us could go. Today, after many years, well, I'm here, and it seems that dreams do come true, and I think it makes everything seem possible. I'm going to tell you a bit about myself. I'm an industrial engineer. I work as director at CITE Textil, Camellos Arequipa. I've worked in the industry, as I said, in the Grupo Inca Alpaca, in Mitchell, in MFH Knits at Atlas. And these companies have helped me a lot in my personal growth to understand a bit about this productive chain. From 8 years ago, I've been working for the state in CITE Textil, which belongs to the ITP, and this is inscribed in the Ministry of Production. And I'm going to tell you a bit about what we're doing related to sustainability of these treasured animals and products which we obtain thanks to the alpaca. I'm going to start talking a bit about CITE, and I've been asked often, what is this institute? What is it for? And in reality, the answer is very simple. We're a public entity which is in Arequipa, which is open to small and medium companies with the goal of making them more competitive and making them much more productive. And it's because of this, from CITE, we spread actions of technological actions like trainings, like technical assistance. We have a small pilot plant of knitwear in Rio Seco, in the district of Cerro Colorado. We also have knitting, dyeing, we have washing, we have a laboratory that's accredited from the 11th of September. It's the first textile laboratory that's accredited in south of Peru, which was put at the disposition of the companies so they can verify the quality of the products. We develop research, innovation together with the universities. We've been speaking about sustainability in this block, and it's very complex sometimes to focus ourselves a bit beyond from how pretty the word sustainability sounds. After the pandemic, we were all hit in some way, and we all had to say, we all ended up thinking we have to be much more responsible regarding our consumption of products, and the alpaca garments are not foreign to this. And from CITE, we were thinking, how can we contribute so that this sustainability is real? It can be felt. So we began to analyze the circles that we had with academy, with the main universities of Arequipa, and we could see that it's urgent to defend what we have here in Arequipa, to defend this flagship product from these attacks that began in the pandemic. At the universities they began doing a bit of research on alpaca. We began to gather information together with IAA, together with the Camelid Table. It's an important institution here which gets together all the breeders from the big companies and small companies, entrepreneurs, designers, universities, institutions, with the goal of contributing towards improvement of alpaca products, and also to solve any challenges that may arise in the chain. And we realized that some things were happening that were favorable around alpaca, and which assuredly many of you already know. I'm going to refresh some of these points. Alpacas do not overgraze. These animals feed on grass. These grasses are many times scarce in nutrients, and they're a lot in the wetlands. And unfortunately, because of the disposition of the mouth of the alpaca, they don't pull them from the roots. The fiber, we have to validate the studies are made. We have to keep on seeing if it's true that the fiber is lessening its value. This animal drinks very little water in comparison with others, approximately 1 liter per day. In the washing processes, the washing of fiber, they use less chemical products and energy. It only has 3.5% of grease on the fleece. Other animals have more, for example, the goat or the sheep. It's possible to dye alpaca with natural products, and that's what we're doing at CITE. And they can be recycled. The textile leftovers or remnants can also be recycled. What are we working on aligned with the sustainability? The first step is the traceability. We're probably going to keep on speaking about this. Important thing here is to make this tendency effective, that the consumer, on receiving the garment, the person can be capable of identifying all the productive chain, all the actors and all the processes that have been involved for the person to get the garment. This tendency, which is strengthening every day, is proposed by the consumer, and this consumer wants to be informed This consumer wants to know that he's actually receiving a product made from alpaca fiber, not other fibers. This consumer wants to know how the money he pays is distributed along all the chain. And the only way of doing this, or one of the ways to do is through traceability. We've created Alpaca Trace. It's a platform, a software based on blockchain. We made a prototype of a platform that permits us to work on the product from its beginning to its end. A traceability system. The technology we're using is blockchain, and it lets us monitor the productive process of all the garment. This is going to guarantee transparency and authenticity. It's a pilot. We're capable already of tracing the final product until the tops and weavings and yarns. As a government and state, we have to work hand in hand with a large industry, who are precisely the ones who manufacture the yarns and the tops. We've had meetings with Mitchell and Grupo Inca, which have been favorable. We hope that this continues. Nevertheless, budgets are short, and we have to knock on doors to financing funds so that we can reach the animal until we can get to the producer, to the breeding. And we hope that in 2025 we can finalize this project and be able to tell you how it was. For this initial pilot, there are 3 pymes that we're working with, and that you're probably going to find in this fair. Caprice, which is dedicated to fabrics, Panatura, which is knitting, and Textil Viso, and also knitting. And these are not just nice words, this is a reality. Companies begin to monitor, the companies begin to certify, because what is achieved are certifications. In the CITE, there's a stand. We have a demonstration of how traceability is done. These are the benefits for the consumer. It's going to generate trust and authenticity, more transparency in the productive process. It's going to guarantee sustainable ethics, access to information, and it contributes to good practices in the textile industry. And also for the companies, between these benefits is compliance with the regulations related to sustainability, transparency and trust for the final consumer, brand protection, innovation and differentiation. A second aspect in these emerging tendencies that we have today, and we want to be aligned to also in the alpaca industry, is a 4.0 industry. Arequipa has changed. Arequipa has stopped knitting by hand, as we say. Many don't believe that the pymes from Arequipa are already industrialized. They have computerized and electronic machinery, differently to other regions. Speaking about industry, Arequipa also has its artisanal side also. I want to talk about the tendency of this 4.0 tendency and how it's aligned to sustainability, precisely with the acquisition of machinery, with acquiring modern technology to be able to do the knits. We have acquired 2 types of machinery, until 3, which let us carry out textile products where there's a great savings on the leftovers and the remnants. Alpaca is expensive, we have to take care of it. And one of the manners is through technology. Getting technology closer to textile companies, we can guarantee that we're contributing towards the environment, on taking care on the remnants, on the leftovers, so that this can be minimum. We have a machine, conventional, that needs panels, and today we've also brought it to the fair, so you can see the first machine in Peru that knits complete garments. Here in the fair we have a machine that belongs to CITE that ends up with a complete product without any seams, with no processes of cutting. This saves, it brings productivity, less handwork, less time. This is where we're heading with the tendencies in Arequipa. Another type of machinery, the one to make gloves. This is helping a lot with the pymes. What happens with the pymes is that when they have production, they always have leftovers, and they don't know what to do with it. 300, 200 grams of yarn. Our proposal is to go to CITE, leave those leftovers of yarns, and we will give you caps or gloves, finished products. And this way, we help you to use up all these remnants, which go adding up finally to a lot of kilos. We had a MIPE this year where we managed to collect around 2,000 kilos of small cones of leftovers. 2,000 kilos. How much is that in value? So this is another proposal that we brought to. This contributes towards sustainability. We have a machine that also permits us to knit thick knittings, regenerated yarns. This is what I'm going to speak about in a while. This 4.0 are not only knitting machines, it's much more. But from CITE, we're focusing ourselves on this, in this part. As user, you get to customize textile garments, helped by software, which is very modern, of different technologies from Japan or from Germany, which let us carry out customized designs, the reduction of there's time reduction also of delivery. It's favorable for companies because leftovers are reduced, the resources optimized, and efficiency increases and productivity increases also. A third tendency, which we're working on in CITE, and we're trying to align with the small companies, is a circular economy. This is nothing else than making maximum use of all the resources, and this is what we want to manage. We're developing from the design, from the textile design. I see several of my students here from Instituto del Sur, patchwork technique. The possibility of gather all these leftovers generated on types of knitting that have come out from the cutting processes. You can't imagine the quantity of leftovers that the small companies have, and the fabulous things that can be achieved on doing and joining these pieces with a bit of textile design. We have a new garment which is sellable, that can be offered without any doubts. We can get garments that are valued over $500. We are also doing products, regenerated products. We count with the process of carding. What happens is that the leftovers, we make it as a dust, and we get fiber, and from fiber we get yarns, and from this we make products. This is the patchwork technique, one of the designs we have, and this is a cap which we have got with regenerated yarn. You can notice a white spots. These come because it comes from several compositions, or for several different leftovers. Another technique which we're taking advantage of using felt. This is quite a developed technique in Cusco and Puno, and today in Arequipa is just it's getting stronger here in Arequipa. All this can be achieved with leftovers. Imagine arriving with all these techniques to these hundreds of pymes we have in the southern region and get to incorporate all this knowledge, all this technological knowledge. I think we could contribute not only with the environment, but also with the economy, with the pockets of the micro and small business people. Some of the benefits of the circular economy, we can have unique designs regarding patchwork, which is quite common now, and many countries are applying it. And on mixing alpaca with other fibers with less quality, it permits the user to accede to lower prices. And there's also participation in responsible consumption. And the company, it takes advantage of the textile leftovers, it optimizes resources, improves reputation of the company, innovates, and attracts new markets. Another tendency we're working on at CITES are the natural dyes. And not only natural dyes, we use algae. This is a nice project we did with Santa Maria Católica University, where we took advantage of invasive algae in the Peruvian seaside in Piura and Ica. These algae, we've extracted the liquid that they have inside, and with this liquid, we've been able to do dyes. We wanted to experiment. When we took out their natural pigment, we developed an industrial process so we could use natural dyes in Puna and Arequipa with this. And not only with natural products. And this also the circular economy enters here with Yantesier. We've managed to develop natural dyes, extracting from the onion skin. Onion skin is waste. We don't use it for anything. Nevertheless, I invite you to go to the stand we have here. You can see products that have been dyed with onion skin. If you look, the onion skin is green, but we've managed to get green tones. We have 16 colors from green to blue, and this is just the beginning of the research. And I'm a bit sad that academy is absent here. Universities should come here. The local universities, above all, should be more committed to developing something that's so interesting, so important, as this alpaca industry. Some of the benefits, as user, less risk to allergies, unique styles, you can see that on the model, reduction of the carbon footprint, alternatives that for recycling, and the company is also benefited from the image it's going to project, or products with less toxicity. Some cases of other companies that are working in sustainability here in Arequipa. Inca is the most known, and Inca has for 30 or 40 years it's been doing circular economy without being told or without knowing. Inca has developed a line of production which reuses leftovers and it changes them into carded fabric, and this is destined to different products. Last year, they hope to increase in 20% in relation to last year, where they made 120,000 tons of recycled yarns, and they've done over 600,000 pieces between blankets, stoles. Mitchell is also in this. They're using this. Is using the GOTS regulation, certification GOTS. Mitchell also has brought out its upcycle system. These are regenerated yarn, which permits less waste. And small companies, not just the large ones, the small companies have also entered this circular economy. Uripacucha is a company that was provider of the larger companies, and today it works with markets taking products to Cusco and abroad, and they've managed savings due to recycling, which means something economically to them, doing practicing with circular economy. We have also Brisant company, and we also have the Away company. And the idea is that these initiatives regarding sustainability do not just stay on thesis, do not just stay on paper. It's time we go out to companies and we begin to develop, to propose these new tendencies that will permit the alpaca industry being much more sustainable. Thank you very much.
Ha sido Guido Chirinos, director del CITE Textil, que ha
That was Guido Chirinos from CITE Textil. Now we're going to continue with the program. We have the fourth presentation, Progress in the Life Cycle Analysis of Alpaca. The presenter is Maria Wurzinger. She's from the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences in Vienna, Bochum, in Austria, who I invite to take stand. Buenas tardes a todos. Primero, gracias a los organizadores por haberme invitado.
Of a group I'm working with to present what we are currently working on. And in the program it says I'm from Bochum University in Austria, Vienna. In the meantime, I've moved to a new university in the US, so my name is still the same. I just changed place, but I still work in both our universities, but mainly now in the US. I think this are all, also the morning and the afternoon session are very interesting. And I really enjoyed also the presentation on all the upcoming challenges that are up front because of different laws that we are going to face it's just around the corner in a very short time that also the textile industry has to face and has to address these regulations in order to be able to still be able to competitive and go to different markets. And it seems like especially European market is quite a challenging one. So as you can see, I'm standing here. Oops, there's some information missing on my slide, but you see here a lot of names. So I'm working with a big group of different experts, and and I think that's very nice to see that the textile industry in Peru is looking ahead what is coming up as a new challenge for the industry, and instead of waiting what is coming up, getting prepared to address the questions of the market. So we have started very recently working on a life cycle assessment for the alpaca industry. So my talk, in the first talk, I will briefly focus on general terms, what is a life cycle assessment. And then in the second part, I would like to show you what does that mean when we look into the alpaca industry, how can we work a life cycle assessment. So what is life cycle assessment? As before, my previous speaker, she had a lot of acronyms, so that seems to be very common in legislation. So there are international standards, and all life cycle assessment have to be based on these standards to make them comparable from one assessment to another one. Otherwise, it's very difficult to make informed decisions. So in a life cycle assessment, it's focusing at the moment very much on ecological impact. So we look at emissions and resource use from raw material extraction to disposal, and then we calculate the environmental impact of a product. It is a methodology, which is a very complex one, so this is why you also see so many people working on this project, but it can be used for different purposes, for different industries. And it is just very recently that it has been also applied to livestock production systems, and we will see later on that this puts quite a challenge for life cycle assessment. So what you see over here, it's a tractor. It's just should illustrate in an LCA you can measure what do you need just to construct a tractor. You need quite a lot of different raw materials, and then you also have to think, okay, that you have your tractor for some years on your farm, but then what at the end of the life of the tractor, what are you doing? Can you do recycling products, etc.? So this is what is illustrated why there is a tractor on this slide. So we are scientists, we love to have very clear definitions. So there is one formal definition of an LCA, which has, so we address environmental aspects and potential environmental impacts throughout a product system's life cycle. So we start from the very beginning to the very end of a specific product, and we look into all the different elements that are needed to produce a certain product. So what for you can use an LCA, life cycle assessment? So the ISO standard here has put up 3 main topics that could be used at the LCA for. So the first says product development improvement, or so you might already have a product, and you can use the LCA to identify what we call hotspots. What are the critical aspects throughout your production chain that you really have to focus on to improve the process of your product? So how can you implement new technologies to reduce the environmental impact? Or my previous speaker here, he talked about using different natural colors for your fiber instead of chemical colors. So that would be one option where you identify a hotspot and you can react and improve the situation. Strategic planning, political decisions. So it can be used by the industry, but it can also be used for governments and NGOs, for governments, also for legislation purposes, or to set standards, and to, as we heard before, the enforcement of laws also forces the industry to react, improve, or to have more sustainable processes. Marketing, or you can use it as a marketing tool. You can say, okay, I did my homework, I did my LCA, and these are the results, and then you can convince your consumer that this is a good product. But we also heard we have to be aware that you are not using an LCA as a greenwashing tool so that you somehow make your product look nice, because consumer will be also very, if they find out that you're cheating on them, you lose the trust of the consumer. Regaining trust of consumers is a very hard job, so don't use it as a greenwashing tool. As I said, livestock LCAs are a challenge. So when you talk to life cycle assessment experts, they are usually a bit hesitant to look into livestock, because LCAs were designed for industrial products. And there it's more linear. You have one product, you would like to design, but livestock, we are faced with different challenges. So we still look into greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity loss, eutrophication, so there is quite a complex, the livestock production systems are very complex, and to get all the data, we also talked about data generation, is very difficult. So we have to consider all these enteric fermentation, so what's going on in the rumen of an alpaca. We don't know a lot about that yet, so how much greenhouse gas is methane emission is done by an alpaca. There is slowly coming up research, but we are facing some challenges there. Manure management, also, how do you manipulate the manure? How many emissions do you see there? So, I mean, these are obviously elements of an LCA that you're not seeing in the industry when you look into designing a car, for example. And we are here at Alpaca Fiesta, and everybody is just thinking as alpaca producing high quality fiber. Yes, that's true. Alpacas produce high quality fiber, but not only. They have meat, they produce meat. People eat delicious steaks of alpaca meat. It's sustaining the livelihoods of families. They also use the manure, maybe for their crop production, maybe they burn it. So there are multiple usage of animals. What we also see in the alpaca industry, there is a value. If you have a very high quality animal, it sells also nicely as a breeding animal. So there are multiple but high quality products that also have to considered and assigned in a life cycle assessment to make a fair comparison. So these multi-output systems is a huge challenge when we look into an LCA. There is also a standard format, so to speak, in how a life cycle assessment should be done. So we have step one, you set your goal, your scope, what is and we will see what we are doing in the alpaca LCA. So what is your goal of your study? Step two, an inventory analysis where you gather all the data available that you need to actually run your assessment. It's a very complicated task already. And then you do the impact assessment, and finally you do an interpretation, and based on your interpretation, you can take certain decisions. So just to highlight again, I'm here standing on behalf of a large group of people are coming also from different universities, and we also have here Catch Your Benefit and NGOs, so we are looking also from different angles. Everybody brings in a different expertise. We have an interdisciplinary team because it's so complex, the alpaca system, so we need different people addressing different questions. So just for looking at what is happening on farm level, so we have experts on animal nutrition, on animal breeding, on rangeland management, soil science, sustainability assessments. We have experts on just running the LCA. So it requires a consortium of people addressing one topic. And I think it's also a nice example, this project here, because it also, we are working, international colleagues are outside of Peru, but we also have very strong links to Peruvian academia and university. I think it's because you always need the context-specific information plus people who are experts on a specific methodology, so that it actually, at the end of the day, the LCA that you are creating is making sense. Because we all know you can run a program, but bad data in, bad outcomes. So we have to make sure that good data goes into our LCA. So what is our goal? We would like to assess the environmental impact of alpaca fiber production, and the second step is actually to compare it with a most likely substitute. What does that mean? You can say, okay, an alpaca sweater, and compare it to a sweater produced from another, maybe from acrylic fiber or another fiber. So what's the difference between these two products? In scope, we would like to address two stages. We have here, it's called cradle to gate. So looking from the beginning of the fiber production on the farm to the end, just to have the yarn, or we go cradle to grave, then we have really a sweater or another product made out of alpaca. We are currently in step 2 of our project. We just started in September, so we are just very at the beginning of the project. We collect primary data. What does that mean? Where does that data come from? We have field data, farm data. We interview experts. We interview farmers. We have research database already at university in Lima. So there has been a long history of doing research over a long period, because you sometimes also need data that's going back several years. It's not just having the data from one single year. So we are using that information, but we also go back, find literature in Spanish, in English. That's another advantage of having an international consortium, because you have people with different language skills. And I think a very important, very, very important step of our LCA is that we are a team, but at the same time, we start a review process over there, start of a review process of LCA experts, which are independent from us. So it's not like we can say, okay, we like to do it, and we use that data that we would like to use. There will be outside people judging and telling us what are we doing. And they will point out if there is a mistake, and so that we can correct. But this is, I think, a very, very important point, that we have this external review process going on along the whole project duration. As I said, this inventory is LCA requires a lot of data, very specific. I've just put up here, some snapshots of the Excel sheets that we are supposed to fill right now. You need different database from the LCA, you need expert interviews, you need to gather all the information and have to fill quite a lot of data sheets. And yeah, it's called here, it's an iterative procedure, so you start filling, but then you keep on finding new information and you add that on. I'm sure you cannot read what's written all here, but this is just to illustrate in a very simple way what we are dealing. You see a green part, so this is all the information that we need for what's happening on farm. How are farmers rearing their alpacas? And then there's a cut. This is then when the fiber, after shearing, goes to the blue section, which is the whole industry, where you start all the processing then of the fiber, from cleaning, washing, all the steps up to finally be able to sell your final product. So at the moment, we have two groups in our team. So one is looking into the farm, at farm level, what data is required. The industry is strongly collaborating with us, providing very many insights into their industry secrets, providing this information to run the LCA. So we are doing quite good in data collection so far. And yeah, we hope to find, to get to the first analysis pretty soon. The Higg index was mentioned. We also have to look into that one and other categories for how you assess so climate change, eutrophication, resource depletion, etc. All these factors or these potential impacts are addressed in the LCA. Our LCA experts pointed out the LCA is also constantly evolving, improving their methodology, having new, better models to calculate eutrophication, etc. So they are applying the newest methods that are out for the LCA studies. So, and then the interpretation is then really identifying again hotspots, looking what are the critical points along the whole chain. We saw this very complex system diagram with the blue, the processing, and the green, the farm level. Where are actually points where we need to look at and focus on working? The comparison of alpaca fiber with the most likely substitute, it's still quite a bit of an open question for us. What will be the most likely substitute? Because to make a fair comparison, you need equally good data for the other product, because it's unfair to use not very accurate data for the other product, because then you might end up in this greenwashing problem that they say, okay, you use very good data for alpaca, but you didn't use it for the other product. So to make sure that you have a fair comparison, you need very good data for both products. Sensitivity analysis is then for scientists always like to see, so if you change that, how is the reaction of the system? How much benefit does it bring you? Yeah, interpretation of results, writing up reports, preparing presentation, and that's at the end when you do all the interpretation of your data. So with that, I'm sorry, I'm still not be able to show you any results, but what I would like to point out, I also brought something for you. Where is it? When you come in, there is a big stand, a big booth from Catch Your Benefit. So you can find us there if you would like to ask more questions, detailed questions. We also have prepared a flyer, so it's in English and Spanish, where you can also find additional information. So please feel free to come and see me or my colleagues, or to get one of the flyers, because I know it's a lot of information already, so you can read something here. There's also contact information. You can get in touch with us if you would like to know more, or if you would like to join our effort, you're most welcome to do so. Thank you.
We reached to the first part of the second part. Now we have a coffee break. We can go out on the side doors. I will ask you please to come back before 4:15. At the coffee break, you will also be receiving the papers with the survey, with the questions regarding the presentations we've had in the afternoon. Thank you very much.
nombre es John Zulca Ponce. La Pachamama es, para nosotros merece nuestro gran respeto, ¿no? Porque en ello vivimos, convivimos con nuestras familias, también con nuestros animales. El animal que tenemos lo valoramos por su fibra, más que todo, ¿no? Y también nos da ese abrigo y por ello a nuestros animales siempre lo respetamos, lo valoramos.
Mi nombre es Darío Anconeira Seiko. La alpaca es nuestra vida, fuente de vida aquí en esta altura. Nosotros lo estimamos mucho a los animales porque nos da nuestra alimentación, nos da nuestra fuente de vida. Para nosotros el animal, la alpaca es como nuestra familia. Vivimos diariamente con la alpaca, lo estimamos mucho. En el Pachamama no habría alpaca, no viviríamos nosotros, no habría agua. Por ende, hay veces tenemos un reconocimiento a la Pachamama.
Soy Mateo Macedo, trabajo en Clamasa hace 5 años, soy subgerente comercial en esta compañía. Considero que el proceso de trabajar alpaca es súper sagrado porque la conexión que llegan a lograr la naturaleza con los pequeños ecosistemas que viven alrededor de donde está la naturaleza de este animal, logra que podamos abrigar al mundo en general, ¿no? Somos el tercer exportador de fibra de alpaca y eso nos llena de orgullo saber que hay personas con nosotros que tienen más de 30 años trabajando y que el crecimiento y la evolución de la empresa se viene gracias a que con sus manos hemos podido lograr crecer. Debería sentirse orgulloso, los peruanos deberíamos estar orgullosos de tener un animal tan noble y a la vez tan fino y que nos reconozcan desde el principio a fin, ¿no? Desde el trabajo que hacen las comunidades, desde el proceso que es el clasificado, con estas manos que son sagradas, las maestras, llegarlo a la parte industrial, ser muy cuidadoso con los parámetros para que llegue a un producto final que en el caso de Clamasa es el top.
Clamasa busca directamente el trato directo con los productores alpaqueros porque estamos convencidos que son el inicio de la cadena y el que sostiene todo este negocio. Todos aquí llevamos ese cariño, ese calor, esa fuerza que viene desde la Pachamama hasta el final de nuestro proceso, donde tenemos nuestros top que tienen una calidad no solamente en producción, no solamente como productos, sino que tiene el calor y la calidad humana que nosotros admiramos desde el campo hasta el final de nuestro proceso.
En toda la cadena de valor, buscamos con todos nuestros socios un crecimiento sostenible, transparente y justo. Nuestra historia, que empezó en 1967, es la de compromiso con las comunidades alpaqueras, con nuestros colaboradores y con la industria. Una historia en la que crecemos todos.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Al, the Black Alpaca. I was told that you are really interested in sustainable fashion. So let me show you Paco Marca. This is where Grupo Inca works our fiber for your upcoming collections. Come. I'll show you. Saluda, Fernando.
Hola.
Fernando is an alpaca farmer. And like everyone here, he protects the ancestral legacy that looks after our culture, my family, and of course, the environment! Here, there are experts who work with innovative and sustainable processes. And their genetic research has achieved unbelievable things, such as saving the great variety of natural colors of the alpaca. Like my black colored fiber. Oh yeah. Or creating an ultra soft and long-lasting fiber for the top brands in the world. Well, there really is so much to show you and tell you about Grupo Inca. But I don't want to take more of your time. I know you're a busy person, so if you want to know more, I'm leaving you this link. Bye. Take care. Ciao, ciao.
nombre es John Tulca Ponce. La Pachamama para nosotros merece nuestro gran respeto, ¿no? Porque en ello vivimos, convivimos con nuestras familias, también con nuestros animales. El animal que tenemos lo valoramos por su fibra, más que todo, ¿no? Y también nos da ese abrigo y por ello a nuestros animales siempre lo respetamos, lo valoramos.
Mi nombre es Darío Anconeira Seiko. La alpaca es nuestra vida, fuente de vida aquí en esta altura. Nosotros lo estimamos mucho a los animales porque nos da nuestra alimentación, nos da nuestra fuente de vida. Para nosotros el animal, la alpaca es como nuestra familia. Vivimos diariamente con la alpaca, lo estimamos mucho. En el Pachamama no habría alpaca, no viviríamos nosotros, no habría agua. Por ende, hay veces tenemos un reconocimiento a la Pachamama.
Soy Mateo Macedo, trabajo en Clamasa hace 5 años, soy subgerente comercial en esta compañía. Considero que el proceso de trabajar alpaca es súper sagrado porque la conexión que llegan a lograr la naturaleza con los pequeños ecosistemas que viven alrededor de donde está la naturaleza de este animal, logra que podamos abrigar al mundo en general, ¿no? Somos el tercer exportador de fibra de alpaca y eso nos llena de orgullo saber que hay personas con nosotros que tienen más de 30 años trabajando y que el crecimiento y la evolución de la empresa se viene gracias a que con sus manos hemos podido lograr crecer. Debería sentirse orgulloso, los peruanos deberíamos estar orgullosos de tener un animal tan noble y a la vez tan fino y que nos reconozcan desde el principio a fin, ¿no? Desde el trabajo que hacen las comunidades, desde el proceso que es el clasificado, con estas manos que son sagradas, las maestras, llegarlo a la parte industrial, ser muy cuidadoso con los parámetros para que llegue a un producto final que en el caso de Clamasa es el top.
Clamasa busca directamente el trato directo con los productores alpaqueros porque estamos convencidos que son el inicio de la cadena y el que sostiene todo este negocio. Todos aquí llevamos ese cariño, ese calor, esa fuerza que viene desde la Pachamama hasta el final de nuestro proceso, donde tenemos nuestros top que tienen una calidad no solamente en producción, no solamente como producto, sino que tiene el calor y la calidad humana que nosotros admiramos desde el campo hasta el final de nuestro proceso.
En toda la cadena de valor, buscamos con todos nuestros socios un crecimiento sostenible, transparente y justo. Nuestra historia, que empezó en 1967, es la de compromiso con las comunidades alpaqueras, con nuestros colaboradores y con la industria. Una historia en la que crecemos todos.
nombre es John Tulca Ponce. La Pachamama es, para nosotros merece nuestro gran respeto, ¿no? Porque en ello vivimos, convivimos con nuestras familias, también con nuestros animales. El animal que tenemos lo valoramos por su fibra, más que todo, ¿no? Y también nos da ese abrigo y por ello a nuestros animales siempre lo respetamos, lo valoramos.
Mi nombre es Darío Anconeira Seiko. La alpaca es nuestra vida, fuente de vida aquí en esta altura. Nosotros lo estimamos mucho a los animales porque nos da nuestra alimentación, nos da nuestra fuente de vida. Para nosotros el animal, la alpaca es como nuestra familia. Vivimos diariamente con la alpaca, lo estimamos mucho. En el Pachamama no habría alpaca, no viviríamos nosotros, no habría agua. Por ende, hay veces tenemos un reconocimiento a la Pachamama.
Soy Mateo Macedo, trabajo en Clamasa hace 5 años, soy subgerente comercial en esta compañía. Considero que el proceso de trabajar alpaca es súper sagrado porque la conexión que llegan a lograr la naturaleza con los pequeños ecosistemas que viven alrededor de donde está la naturaleza de este animal logra que podamos abrigar al mundo en general, ¿no? Somos el tercer exportador de fibra de alpaca y eso nos llena de orgullo saber que hay personas con nosotros que tienen más de 30 años trabajando y que el crecimiento y la evolución de la empresa se viene gracias a que con sus manos hemos podido lograr crecer. Debería sentirse orgulloso, los peruanos deberíamos estar orgullosos de tener un animal tan noble y a la vez tan fino y que nos reconozcan desde el principio a fin, ¿no? Desde el trabajo que hacen las comunidades, desde el proceso que es el clasificado, con estas manos que son sagradas, las maestras, llegarlo a la parte industrial, ser muy cuidadoso con los parámetros para que llegue a un producto final que en el caso de Clamasa es el top.
Clamasa busca directamente el trato directo con los productores alpaqueros porque estamos convencidos que son el inicio de la cadena y el que sostiene todo este negocio. Todos aquí llevamos ese cariño, ese calor, esa fuerza que viene desde la Pachamama hasta el final de nuestro proceso, donde tenemos nuestros top que tienen una calidad no solamente en producción, no solamente como producto, sino que tiene el calor y la calidad humana que nosotros admiramos desde el campo hasta el final de nuestro proceso.
En toda la cadena de valor, buscamos con todos nuestros socios un crecimiento sostenible, transparente y justo. Nuestra historia, que empezó en 1967, es la de compromiso con las comunidades alpaqueras, con nuestros colaboradores y con la industria. Una historia en la que crecemos todos.
Agradezco a ustedes por por la puntualidad. Quiero invitar, por favor, al estrado, al moderador, bueno, Raúl Rivera, que es gerente de marketing de Mitchell y compañía, ya está con nosotros. Quisiera, por favor, invitar también al estrado a Alberto Maurer,
Executive Manager
de la producción, también
of the
de Perú,
Institute of Production of Peru,
y a Celso Ayala,
and Celso Ayala,
investigador en mejoramiento
research
genético animal
in
de la Universidad
genetics
Mayor de San Andrés,
in
en
San
Bolivia.
Andrés University from
Y los
Bolivia,
que son nuestros panelistas.
and
Y
Raúl
también
Rivera,
invito al
who's
estrado
marketing manager
a
for Mitchell
los
and Company.
expositores de la jornada de la tarde. Por favor, quisiera
I would like to
invitar a
ask
Esther Chicota, la consultora
Esther
internacional en
Chicota,
sostenibilidad
International
estratégica,
Consultant on Strategic
a
Sustainability,
Honor
Cohen,
directora
Director of
de
Anthesis
de los
Group
Estados
from the
Unidos,
USA,
a
Guido Chirinos, Director of CITE Textil, Camelios Arequipa,
y a María
and
Bursinger,
Maria
ella
Bursinger,
es académica tanto en
she's
universidades de Austria como de Estados Unidos.
professor in Austria and the States.
El eje temático 2 del que
The
nos hemos ocupado
Axis
durante la
2,
tarde
which
es
we have been dedicated to now
sostenibilidad de los camelios
to in the
sudamericanos
afternoon,
y la agenda
is the
pendiente
sustainability of
2030.
Andean camelids
Esto es
and the
en línea
agenda
con
for
la propuesta de
2030.
Alpaca Fiesta
This is aligned
2024.
with
El
Alpaca
segundo eje
Fiesta
temático busca
2024.
presentar los
This seeks
avances
to
en
look for
materia
the
de
progress
sostenibilidad
regarding
en el sector de
sustainability
Alpaca e
in the Alpaca
identificar
sector and
los
identify
desafíos aún
the
pendientes
challenges which
con
are still
vista
pending
al año 2030.
until
Dejo con
2030.
ustedes al moderador
I'm going to leave you with the
de este
moderator of this,
conversatorio, Raúl Rivera, gerente
with
de
Raúl Rivera,
marketing
Marketing
de
Director of
Mitchell
Mitchell and Company in Peru.
Buenas tardes con todos.
Good afternoon, everyone.
¿Me escuchan bien? Sí, gracias. Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Primero que todo,
First of all,
agradecer
I want to thank
a esta invitación,
this
a moderar
invitation to
panel.
moderate
Quiero también
this panel. I
agradecer
also want to
a los cuatro
thank
ponentes
the
que
four
tuvieron unas
presenters.
presentaciones
We have
bastante
had
diversas,
quite
muy
diverse
interesantes.
presentations which have been
Sobre
quite
la
interesting on
sostenibilidad.
sustainability.
Como ya sabemos, la
As we all know,
sostenibilidad es un
sustainability
tema
is a
sumamente
subject which is very important
para las empresas,
for
es algo que ya no se
companies.
puede ignorar.
It is something that
y
cannot
que
be
tenemos
ignored
que
any
ya
longer,
abordar
and we have
de
to
manera inmediata.
approach in an immediate manner. I also want to welcome Alberto Maurer and Celso Ayala,
Estarán haciendo unas
who are going to
presentaciones.
give us some presentations, and I want to give leeway to Alberto, please, to begin
Con su presentación.
with his
Muchas
presentation. Thank you very much.
Muy buenas tardes con todos. Es un
Good
placer para
afternoon,
mí estar
everyone.
acá.
It's a pleasure to be
Muchísimas
with
gracias
you.
por la
Thank you very
invitación.
much for the invitation.
Soy Alberto Maurer, director
I'm Alberto
ejecutivo
Maurer,
del
Executive
Instituto
Manager of the
Tecnológico de la
Technical
Producción.
Institute of Production.
Tenemos 30
We have
centros de innovación
30
tecnológica a nivel nacional, como
technological
mencioné,
innovation centers
4 de
in
ellos
Peru,
dedicados a
4
la
of them
cadena
dedicated to the
textil
textile
camellos.
camelid chain
Y
sector.
Guido es uno de nuestros
And Guido is
directores
one
acá
of
en
the
Arequipa desarrollando cosas
directors
muy
here in
innovadoras.
Arequipa, who's developing very innovating
una
things.
presentación,
More
tengo
than
una
a presentation, I have an
de las charlas que
appreciation
hemos visto
of the
hace un rato.
talks we have had
Me ha
recently.
parecido
They seemed
extraordinariamente interesantes.
very
Y
interesting.
quiero abstraerme
And I
un
want
poco
to
antes de hablar de algunos de los detalles de lo
speak,
muy interesantes
before
que hemos
speaking a
escuchado.
bit more on the
Es que
details,
vemos cómo la industria,
we
el
see how
mercado,
the
el
industry, the
consumidor, que
market of the
finalmente quien
consumer,
manda,
who is finally the one
está llegando al siglo
who gives
XXII
the major
con
steps
una
here.
serie de
There is a
requerimientos,
series of requirements
necesidades,
and needs
demandas.
and demands,
¿Y quién debe suplir estos pedidos
and
del siglo,
who
no del XXI,
has
sino
to
del
see
XXII?
to this?
Son micro,
It's a
pastores,
micro
antondinos,
herders
de
from the
subsistencia.
highlands who have
Entonces,
subsistence.
tenemos un estilo de vida
We have a style of
que no ha
life
cambiado en
which
1000
hasn't
años,
changed in 1,000 years,
que está luchando por
and they're
sobrevivir
fighting to
en
survive,
demandas ultra
and they're very
sofisticadas
sophisticated things that
que las
they're
estamos
asking for,
nosotros en el
which
ITP
in the
dando,
ITP
llenando el nicho
we're
de la
filling the
bisagra
niche
para
that is needed here
traducir
to translate
estas demandas tan
these
exigentes
very demanding
a una
necessities to a
donde los
reality
márgenes son
where
pequeños
margins
y
are
la vida
very
es dura,
small and life is very
para
harsh.
siempre tratar de
Always
convertirlos en
try to
emprendedores prósperos.
convert them into prosperous business people. This challenge is not easy, it's not simple, it's not short term, but it's a challenge we have at ITP. We're going to have to work to serve as translators and to assure that this new wealth, this new market that's being generated is being shared equitable way, not because they make us feel sorry, but because we say they struggled to reach this quality and the colors and the length of the fibers. They've learned all this, and the quality of the textiles, that's what the consumers want. Thank you very much.
Pase al señor Celso Ayala, por favor.
Celso Ayala, please.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank Fiesta Alpaca
por estar presente acá.
For being present here. One of my greatest concerns, and maybe of all of us here, because we worked in the primary production, is that the sustainability is a very urgent topic, not only in the context where economic resources are generated for the livelihood of the Andean man, but above all, there are many complex situations which could make us enter in an emergency situation which we can't fix. One is the climate change, the lack of water, and if we don't have water, we don't have any grasslands, we don't have animals, or if we don't have animals, and the Andean man is not going to be able to survive there. So maybe the industry can change, or maybe we can work with other fibers, but it's going to be difficult to recover this environment. We're putting the conservation to one side a lot. On the other hand, we've spoken on topics about migration, for example, the price of fiber is not fair, that makes people migrate from the communities to the cities, or the lack of attention that the governments have, at least I'm speaking on the one in my country. They're not giving any support practically to this production, and is not promoting its growth either. These are topics which are going to affect the sustainability of the high Andean man, and we're going to reach a point. At this moment, for example, we had a problem 2 years ago of a crisis, was a very strong drought. This decreases production because we have less breeding, the animal numbers decrease, and the volume of production also decreases. The only way, from my point of view, of being able to, that the high Andean people can subsist and live there, we should motivate in several ways. One way is to pay the fair price that the fiber requires. I think that would be one way of how we can regenerate or do some kind of new activities, and I diversify a bit, not just see the alpaca as a fiber producer, but also other alternatives. Maybe the possibility of it producing meat, see the possibility of not only seeing the industry to change, to convert, to make garments, maybe see another industry, like the camel fiber, they use it for rugs or for isolators, and see a vision of the internal market also, which would also help to increase the level of life of the Andean people. That's my point of view. Thank you.
Gracias, Celso. Bueno, Es un tema ciertamente el de crianza, es
It's
un tema
breeding
digamos,
is
dentro de la
certainly a
cadena de
topic
valor,
inside the
es un
value
punto
chain,
álgido,
which
es
is
un punto,
it's a hot spot.
digamos que no va acorde con todo
It
el
doesn't
resto de la cadena de
doesn't
valor,
go together with all
y que
the
tenemos
rest
que
of the
trabajar mucho en ello, ¿no?
chain value.
Sí,
We
las
have to work
condiciones en la
together.
sierra, pues,
The
son
conditions in
muy
the highlands are
complicadas.
very
Cada
complicated.
vez hay menos,
Each time
criadores,
there are less
pero a la vez
breeders,
tenemos
but
que
at the same
incentivar
time we have to
cambios. Creo que
motivate
es
changes.
importante
I think it's important.
que, por ejemplo, la
For example,
sostenibilidad en la sierra, ¿no? Lamentablemente,
unfortunately,
en
in Peru,
y en Bolivia, de ser la
in
misma,
Bolivia,
la crianza de alpacas
the
es muy
breeding of
localizada.
alpaca
Tenemos en Perú el
is
80% de criadores en el Perú.
there are only
tienen
80% of
promedio
breeders.
entre 60 y 100 animales.
They have very few animals. They have
Ya estamos empezando
between 60 and 100 animals each. We're starting from a
desde un punto de vista, digamos,
point of
de
view
negocios,
of business.
¿no?
Doesn't
una
apt.
familia que
A
tenga
person, a
entre
family
60 y
that
100
has between
animales
60 and 100
es muy
animals
difícil
is very
su
difficult,
subsistencia, por
his
decirlo así.
livelihood, no?
Entonces, creo que una de las
I think that one of the alternatives that we should work on jointly, public and private sectors both, we have to motivate societies. With forming societies, we're going to have more animals, we're going to have a better breeding, better handling management, better registers. Today, thanks to the RAS, they're helping us.
Certificados están llevando registros de
Their
animales.
certified farms have certified animals. Before this didn't exist.
La asociatividad creemos que es
We
un
think
factor
that
muy
forming
importante,
societies is
porque como
important
cadena de
because
valor
as
sí
a
tenemos que darle
value
un
chain
impulso
we have
al
to
primer paso, que es la
motivate
crianza.
the first step, which is the breeding.
No sé si quieren comentar.
I don't know if you want
Por
to
favor,
say
María.
anything regarding this.
I'm not sure which language I should choose. I try English. We always talk about, we have so many smallholder farmers in the alpaca industry, and it's always expressed as a problem. I come from a country, Austria, and we have many, many smallholder farmers. We don't have that many alpacas, but taking the example of the dairy industry, an average farm in Austria has 18 cows. If you go to the US or to France, Germany, I mean, they are laughing. That's ridiculous. What are you doing all day with 18 cows? But when you look how successful the cattle breeders are in Austria, they are exporting high-quality animals to Peru, to the US, globally, because they are having a very strong organization. They are organizing themselves. Each farm is small. We claim small is beautiful, so you don't have to go big all the time. Maybe it's an advantage of being a small farmer. And I assume many farmers here as well have another income that's also giving resilience to farmers. Like in Austria, our farmers, full-time farmers, it's hardly to find. Many of the farmers are dairy farmers and in addition have other incomes. That's a logic of risk aversion, having different incomes. So we might not consider thinking that we have to have big farms to be productive. You can have smaller farms, but still I think we have to have a very good organization that they can work together in different aspects in breeding or also in marketing. So I think small is beautiful and can also have advantages.
Muchas gracias por tus comentarios, María. Lo entiendo muy bien.
I understand it very well, but I do have to admit that I don't agree with some things you say, because here is the situation in the highlands. I tell you it as experience at Mitchell. We're working a lot on the RAS, on the RAS, and doing the training, which are a couple of times per year, pre-auditing, Each visit to the highlands to do this certification of small producers takes us between 8 to 10 days. Yes, you see the farm over there, you see the farm of Mr. Manrique or the Suarez on the other side, and here it seems close by, but it's 4 to 5 hours going by car. It seems close, but it's far, actually. It's another geography. I had the opportunity of being in Europe, and I saw the subsidies, the grants that are given by the government. We have to work a lot on that. I think here the private company has to work jointly with the government to be able to improve this topic. But yes, there are differences. Estoy totalmente de acuerdo. No puedes copiar, claro, el sistema austríaco. Tenemos subsidios a los granjeros, claro que sí, comparado en Perú. Pero aún
maybe it's not a solution always to go big. But we also have to admit in Europe, all over Europe and also in Austria, since the 50s, the number of farms has declined a lot. Many went out of business. And we also have to admit that farmers are getting bigger, but still the question, what is a good size for a farmer to make a living for the family? So I think we have to see what is a good number of animals for farmers. And I agree with the distances, that's really a challenge. But our colleague from FAO, she was looking a lot in digitalization, so maybe there is a potential solution for some of the problems.
Potencial también. Thank you, Maria. Alberto.
Seré muy breve.
I'm going to be very brief. The conversation is very interesting. Let's take an example, the RAS. All producers in Peru, at least, keep on with the traditional methods until the RAS was more or less imposed on them. It was a shock to the system. It was a shock, I think, with positive results, but a shock to the system. And this system already has some years of transforming an industry with the difficulties that we all know about. So I think this is a magnificent opportunity to understand that the shock of the RAS was like a heating up, a previous exercise to the Olympic Games that we have to do with the new European legislation, and which will keep evolving and will be more and more demanding all the time. So we, as the ones who are affected positively, but affected nonetheless by the RAS, we have to start to make ourselves some questions. Why did the RAS have to be imposed? Why didn't we develop it ourselves? What happens with a governance that is not sufficiently solid? So this shock wasn't a shock, but it should have been an own standard of the country, or very similar. So this evolution towards these more demanding systems should be part of the objectives, and we should first of all see which were the lessons learned from RAS, the difficulties, the headaches, the improvements in earnings, or the decrease in profitability. Because these kind of changes are going to be more and more frequent. We should get accustomed to them. I think your commentary was very opportune, very timely. The RAS was imposed on us because of a circumstance that we know all about. But yes, we have to get the positive. The RAS was hard work. I participated in this. Esther also has participated in that. I think all of us in some way have participated. And we've had, on our behalf, we've had to work a lot because we wanted to place a standard. They wanted to put a standard, they didn't go according to our reality. Unfortunately, many of these standards have just one alignment, which is based on the wool industry or another industry. And this is another reality, now regarding alpaca. But yes, we have to bring out the positive of this, as you well say. It's heating up, the warm-up for the Olympic Games, and we have to get down to working because, as we were told, legislations are coming. There's no way back. There's no turning back. And all of us that belong to the alpaca industry or future businessmen that are going to join, they have to know about this. There's no turning back now. It's a reality.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on a solution that was proposed earlier about potentially using the meat and creating an industry around the meat. It might be, and I'm looking to Maria here for verification, a simple solution. Obviously not the technical part of starting up a new supply chain is complicated, but when you add a byproduct or a co-product formally into an LCA, you actually reduce the environmental, the results, the impact of that alpaca wool, because you're actually directing some of that to the byproduct or the co-product. So when we're talking in a world, as I was talking about earlier, with the EU legislation where data is king and is going to be required from the supply chains all the way up, we look to LCAs to provide that data, and potentially that's an easy way to see a change there. Just a thought.
Thank you, Honor.
Gracias, Honor. In the same line, the idea here, I liked the idea of being in front, no, and not go to react, just, no. That was the idea of the first exercise of this, the AII strategy, and I think we should keep on doing this. We should, that's why, call it committee, calling it a working group, working in a cafe, but periodic meetings all the same, to go seeing what's coming. You, from outside, from the breeders, something informal. Something informal but continuous with colleagues from other places to be alert, because if not, we're always going to be caught by surprise. So I do invite, as part of the extension of this proposal of having these meetings, sometimes with agenda or without it. In my experience, I've been doing it a lot in many different fields, and it's very, very valuable to keep on enriching this, and so we're not caught by surprise.
Perfecto, muchas gracias, Esther. Guido, por favor.
Guido, to complement, I've been listening to this, and I also agree we should take the initiative. We're aware, all of us, that the weakest place are the breeders, the weakest point. My reflection goes beyond this. Let's not put the others to one side. In Arequipa itself, the young people don't see anything attractive in the textile industry, especially the alpaca. They don't see it as exciting. Maybe it's because economic conditions or the industry is paying differently, or its payment is very distant to other factors, to other industries. We don't have the formation to cover these positions in the industries. Producers themselves, their children are coming to the city. Some of factors that we have identified is happening, and what we have to do, we have to take action. We have to take action, not wait to have more rules coming from outside, and everything with the goal of protecting this industry, with the goal of making the chain richer. And I think it's the moment to act on these challenges
hoy en día
that today, that the world proposes to us.
Bueno, gracias por sus
Well, thank you for your commentaries. I would like to
dar pase a cada uno de los expositores.
give way to each one of you.
Yo entiendo que hay
I think
preguntas
there are
del público
questions from the
a
public.
cada expositor. Yo quisiera empezar
I would like to start
con una pregunta a cada
with a
cada uno de los
question to each
expositores, así
of
que
the
voy a empezar
presenters.
con
I'm going to begin with Esther.
Esther nos ha hecho la presentación de
You
la
have
estrategia
given us a presentation of the
de
strategy
la Asociación
of the
Internacional de la Alpaca,
of the AIA,
qué pasos debemos
of
hacer
what steps we should take
para cambiar la
to
industria.
change the industry and be able to adapt ourselves to all these changes that are coming. I wanted to ask you, what are the main factors for success that we have to do as an industry jointly, not just the AIA, but all the companies and the producers and each one of the participants in this chain? One for each. What I could answer is what is priority in the strategy, and that if we have to do this, if not, nothing's going to happen. One is we have to be vigilant on the legislations. We have to have it very clear what's coming, when and where, who has to do what and when, because then comes the digitalization. Sadly, sustainability has become compliant. Now it's compliance. Before it was innovation. That's basic. Two, I'm going to say something that's not very common, but I don't think we know the Andean cosmovision sufficiently well to be able to integrate it. Well, their way of living and our way of living, yours and mine, so that we have a lot to learn one from another. They have a lot to learn from us also, and the market values that cosmovision a lot. I think we would we would win a lot of identity and strength if we go to the clients telling them how we work as a country, as a region. And that differentiation is a way of living, of feeling that exists in Andean cosmovisions. So I think we need to know a bit more thoroughly. It's not very typical to say that, it's not normal to say that, but all of us who sell, we sell this Andean cosmovision, this alpaca, and this way of living, but actually do we know it? We don't know it very much, actually. And regarding environment, regenerative, we can't keep on. We have droughts. The Amazon's at 90% with water. There's no water. There's no energy. We are in drought now. It's moving, but we are in drought. And we should learn to breed and try and deal and treat the apples and the pass and the grasslands just as the highland people know how to do. Mutual breeding. So this AIA, these guys, there are guys, there are specialists. It's a learning by doing. We have to start working on helping that the productive activity regenerates the system. And there are practices, some ancestral, some not, that can help us. And these are the paths, and this is to advance. We need data, yes. We have to respond to the government. But there are a lot of things that we, as sector, we have to know, and we're not putting it in front of everything else. Remember the talk, NFC, where there was a question that everything can be told, everything can be added, everything can be summed, but not everything. I think we have to propose different things, and it's a market that's going to respond positively also. I don't know if I answered your question. Okay, thank you, Esther. Are there any questions for Esther from the public? Okay, the questions, are going to be done directly. Creo que el panel es uno de los más interesantes que he escuchado. Me gustaría sugerir que lo que yo he conseguido de algunos de ustedes
everybody seems to be looking at this from the top down. SAC, Higgs, textile exchange, all of these are looking to impose a very international aspect on the people who live in the highlands. I'd like to, just a small point of history. The alpaca breeders, they were in associations. They were called haciendas. And then they had land reforms, and they divided them into cooperatives, and the people didn't trust the cooperatives because they just changed one head who was exploiting them for another. And so then the cooperatives broke down, and they give people the opportunity to take their animals and get 40 acres, 20 acres, and put their 20, 30, 40 animals on those acres and manage them themselves. And so you have a big trust factor between pastoralists and people operating these, and to impose a international solution, a very high-tech solution, I think it's doomed to failure, to be quite honest. And I think that what we need to do is, instead of looking from the top down, we need from the bottom up. Who has been to the highlands and who has interviewed these people and asked them what they can do, what their lifestyle is about? One thing you have to understand, they're pastoralists. They move their animals all the time. They're very remote. We have to examine their lifestyle and then design a system that fits what they do, because it's a lot easier to have a system that fits their culture than it is to change their culture. Because if you think you're going to change their culture after 5,000 years to some sort of industrial developed nation concept, I think that's a lot more difficult than finding a system, because you've interviewed them, you've talked to them, you understand their circumstance, and then get everybody together and say, how can we accommodate both cultures and come out with a positive aspect? And I haven't seen any evidence of that anywhere. Most people have never been to the highlands and have and if you do want to go there and interview them, take a person that speaks Quechua to translate. Because all the people that are husbanding these animals speak Quechua. The women 100%, the men speak Quechua in the home and know a little bit of Spanish. So putting rules, textile exchange rules in English and Spanish that are 70 pages long and you have to fill out, they don't even have a written language in Quechua. It's not going to work, and we need to think about coming from the bottom up. The producers are the most important part of this. The textile industry is doing great. They have large factories, they have good salaries. The people are in Peru, the workers in the factories are treated quite well. They get good wages, everything. The people who are suffering are the ones that have no voice, and we need to be talking to them to come up with a system that is going to be good for the industry, good for the environment, because if we don't have those people taking care of those grasslands are going to decertify. The water is going to all go to all of the mining companies. And if we don't start thinking about that, you think you've got an environmental climate crisis right now, wait till those grasslands are decertified. So that's just my point of view, and I'd like to just turn it over and start from the bottom, and I'd like to hear what you guys think about that, or have you considered it, or is it something that might be possible?
Gracias, Mike, por
Thank you, Mike, for your commentaries.
Sigamos con las preguntas.
Let's continue with the questions, and now we're going to speak.
Gracias.
Then we will mention what Mike has spoken about. Sorry.
Si me permite un ratito, Honor quiere hacer unos
Honor.
comentarios.
I just wanted to respond directly. I'm nodding furiously to everything that you're saying. I think it's absolutely key. This is all top down. It's coming from Europe. You know, we've seen what that looks like before in other areas that are not legislation. Let's be serious. And I think there absolutely should and has to be an opportunity to work from the bottom up. How that works, I am all ears. I would love to be involved. But I guess the wiggle room and the opportunity, especially with this EU legislation, is that no one quite actually knows what it looks like yet. They are guidelines. Yes, there's loads of pages of stuff, but it's not, you need to do A, B, C, D. So until that happens, we have an opportunity to come to the table and potentially change it so that it has more of a representative aspect, so that we're not blanketed, as you say, with, you know, the fine hair industry isn't blanketed with textiles because it is so different and it's so unique. And so I would like to think, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I would like to think that there is that opportunity there.
May I add here? I share a lot the concern that Mike just raised in his comment. EU has a good intention to put up all these regulations because the idea behind is to protect the weakest in the chain, so to speak. The question is, can these people cope with what is now imposed on them, like keeping all these records and so on? And there's one other element, so it's on one side it's the community, and I think you put up the cosmovision, or the Indian cosmovision, where I think it's a very relevant argument that you also made. So we have to see a balance, what's coming from up, the pressure from the market, but also what can come up as a bottom-up process. I mean, there are participatory guarantee systems in place, for example. That could be maybe an option. But we should not forget about the science here. Also, I'm a scientist, and what I saw, for example, with the rust, this rush of, we have to shear animals in an animal-friendly way. No stress on alpacas while shearing. And then all of a sudden the question came up, what is stress for an alpaca? Who knows? So we have done some studies on that one, but we have not concluded to say, okay, there is stress and you can reduce stress, but which level of stress for an alpaca is harmful in the long run? So the standards are even ahead of us, telling us what to do, and we have not yet coped with the science to tell farmers, when you do this, this will help the animal, and just measuring stress for an alpaca, there is missing data in the literature. So this is really, there's a big, big gap that, and this is just one example of many others along all the production that we still have not understood. And don't take information from sheep and put it and say this applies to alpaca. That's wrong, because they are completely different in their behavior. So you cannot compare sheep and alpaca. So we also have to be clear, there has to go a lot of research in basic research to find answers that the market is posing on us and on the producers.
Gracias, María. Quisiera expandir un poquito, si me permiten, en los comentarios que acaban de hacer, porque me han parecido particularmente interesantes. Guido, en su presentación, el director del CITE Textil Camélidos Arequipa, mencionó que lamentaba un poco la ausencia de la academia en este evento y en muchos otros eventos, donde hay uno que otro representante, pero no vemos el gran número de alumnos, profesores, tesistas, debates, etcétera. Dicho sea de paso, solo como lo que se llama en Perú un publicherry, este año empezamos con un programa nacional de practicantes profesionales y espero el 2025 vamos a empezar con un programa nacional de tesistas. Les pagamos la tesis, que vayan a las micro, pequeñas, medianas industrias, empresas a resolver los problemas y que publiquen. Entonces, hay un problema, hay un talón de Aquiles con los que somos científicos, que es que lo que nos parece interesante pensamos que es útil. Y esto
And
no
this
siempre se da.
is not always true.
Entonces la pregunta
So the
es,
question is,
si hay estas
if there
grandes
are
brechas
these great
en la
gaps
ciencia,
in
de
science
alpacas,
regarding
de
alpacas,
de
textiles,
fibra, de
fibers,
comercio,
commerce,
de antropología, de
anthropology,
relaciones humanas,
human
formar
relationships, forming
asociaciones,
associations,
¿quién la ha mapeado?
who has mapped this out?
¿Quién ha dicho cuáles
Who
son
has
las
said
brechas?
which are the gaps?
¿Y quién está
And
dando
who
la
is
inversión para asegurar
making
que
the
se hace la
investment to
investigación para
make sure that the
cerrar esas
research
brechas
is being done to close
de
these gaps
conocimientos en las
of
cuales
knowledge in
no
which
importa qué
it doesn't
plan
matter what plan,
comercial,
what commercial plan
práctico
or practical
o de
plan
mejora,
or
al
improvement
menos,
we can do?
poca probabilidad que sea
There's
exitoso.
little probability that it will be
Entonces, eso
successful.
también es tarea
So this is also
nuestra.
our task.
Último Pulicherry,
Last,
en el
this
ITP
in ITP,
estamos empezando
we're
a
beginning
desarrollar
to
los
develop
planes de
the
innovación
innovation plans
también para la cadena textil
for
Camélidos
camelid
hasta el 2050.
chain until
Así que
2050.
lo haremos público para
So
que
we're going to
todos
make this
comenten
public so you
en su
can
momento.
comment
Muchas
on
gracias.
it at the proper moment. Thank you very much.
Sobre el tema que yo siempre me he hecho una consulta,
I've
una
always
duda,
made a question to myself,
y me pregunto,
and I
digo,
ask,
¿cómo el
how-
hombre altandino,
how the
pese a las
Andean
presiones que
man,
tiene,
despite the
varios
pressures
siempre los ha tenido
it
algunos,
has,
sigue sobreviviendo?
how has he survived in these conditions?
No está bien
It's not,
pagado por
he's
la
not
fibra,
well paid for the fiber.
siempre ha tenido problemas
They
de-
always had the
de
problem
migración, tiene
of
presión de la
migration,
minería
pressure
y
from
muchas otras
mining,
cosas.
and many other aspects.
Ellos tienen sus propias
They have their
estrategias
own
en las
strategies
cuales han sabido diversificar
on which they've known how to diversify the situation.
esas estrategias
On
en las que
these,
tenemos que trabajar
these
para
are the
poder
strategies we have to work on to be able to
o
increase
mejorar sus
or improve
condiciones de
their
vida.
conditions, their life conditions.
Porque en realidad
Because in
siempre
reality,
ha habido esta cadena, o
this
por lo
chain
menos
has
desde los
always
años que
existed,
se ha creado
at
la industria,
least
ha habido esta cadena.
since
No digo luchar
the
contra
industry
la
has
industria,
existed.
pero
Not
hay
fight
otras
against industry,
alternativas
but
que
there are
podemos
other alternatives that we can
generar para
generate to be able to
favorecer
favor
el incremento,
in the increase of their
a su mejora
life conditions or improve their life
Y
conditions.
es el hecho, por ejemplo,
And
si
the
yo
fact
crío
is, if I
alpacas,
breed
tendría que
alpacas,
alternativamente,
I
donde
would
no puedo
have,
criar alpacas,
where I
tendría pues
can't breed
llamas.
alpaca, well, I'll have llamas
Esas
then,
alternativas
which is
viables.
another viable
Entonces,
alternative.
por ejemplo,
For
mucha
example,
gente
many
vive de lo
people
que
live
es la llama
from
porque
the
es un
llama.
producto
Why?
que
Because
puede
it's a product
salir muy
that
fácilmente al
comes
mercado
out very
porque
easily
puede
to the
bajar en
market,
cualquier
because you
momento, no
can
esperar un
slaughter
año
it
o
at any
2
moment. You
años
have to
para
wait. You don't have to
escalar un
wait
animal.
to shear.
Entonces, hay estrategias,
So
y
there
hay
are
cosechas de
strategies,
agua,
there are water
hay formas
harvesting,
en
there are
las cuales
ways
ellos
in which
han
they
implementado
have
eso. Porque
implemented their
el Estado
lives.
en realidad
Because the
no
state
ha
actually
apoyado nada, por lo
hasn't
menos en mi país no ha
given
apoyado.
support.
Ellos, y
They,
sobre eso hay que
and above this, we have to
Más bien nos
strengthen
ponen
these
muchas
points.
trabas muchas veces el Estado
The
para
state
poder
gives us
desarrollar
lots of obstacles to be able to
Entonces,
improve the
ellos
situation.
generan sus propias
So they generate their
políticas,
own
sus propias,
policies, their own
estrategias de
strategies
Entonces,
to.
creo que ahí está,
I
no
think
estamos
that's,
leyendo
we're not
bien la
reading
situación, cómo el
well
hombre anda
how the
con su
Andean
propia
man,
cosmovisión
with their
ha
own
podido
cosmovision,
generar
has been able to generate many things. Thank you. I think it's important what you just said and what Esther said to understand the cosmovision. There was a question in the public. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ital Marique Sanchez, professor. During 20 years, and natural and social aspects. I'm going to talk about one point. If we have, in all this time, we have fabulous research, industry is growing, until when are we going to have the, when is the inhabitant is going to receive what he deserves for the cost of fiber that comes from their farms or the productions. We're 500 years practically with the same. I don't see great changes. I don't see any changes here. Well, regarding the price, unfortunately, it's a topic that goes according to the market. We as industry, we would like to be able to pay more, but we have to be conscious that there is a market that's open to paying a price for the fiber. Many efforts are being done through the government, through commercial visits, promoting more alpaca, so it can reach more countries. And if we see the prices in the last years, Yes, they are being paid a bit more. Obviously, we're far from what we would wish, but it's a market topic, no? It has to do with the market. Maybe promoting alpaca more, we can have more productivity and we can improve the price. It's a process. It can't be done from day to day. Well, I want to finish with this roundtable, this conversation, with some small commentaries. Esther has given us a strategy that we want as an industry, and something that I want to highlight, that all of us must participate. It's not an association, it's not a company. We have to get together. When this NGO attacked, I always learned to take something positive out of life. There's always something positive from the worst moment we can be going through. I think that in the alpaca industry, when this attack happened, our strength as industry was get together. We got together from breeders until the large industry. I think that has been one of the greatest virtues of industry. And I want to highlight it because thanks to the work of the industry and with the government, we've managed a lot of progress, and I think that's a path. Honor, you've given us a presentation of what's coming with the legislation. It's a very complicated topic. Not everyone in the industry are prepared to face this, so we have to address this as soon as possible. We have to put it on the agenda. I think through the ITP, we have to help to educate. We have to understand what this legislation is about. It's important that the people understand and what they have to achieve to be able to keep on exporting towards Europe. Europe is a very important market for Peru and alpaca. So we have to support each other, government, ourselves, and the private industry in promoting, in diffusing what this is about, and take action. Because this is not going backwards. We're already 2 years or more for this to be implemented, so there's no going back. Guido has given us a very interesting presentation regarding innovation. As from now, we've spoken briefly in Mitchell. We have a system regarding fiber which can be connected easily with your platform, and there are other companies also who do it. There's very interesting things, the circularity, the use of leftovers is very important. We in Mitchell, for example, we take out 2 very interesting products. We do anti-shrinking treatment, which is totally friendly with the environment, anti-shrinking for the alpaca, and it's working very well. And the upcycle yarns, which is a use of the leftovers with yarns, we get them together and we make different yarns, again, new yarns. I think mentioning those topics has been very interesting so that people can understand everything that can be done. And finally, Maria has given us a very interesting presentation. We, many times in the industry, I include myself, we make affirmations, and we don't know how to prove them. And the NCA, the life cycle, is a study that's very interesting, and it's a starting point to be able to show that alpaca really has attributes of where it lives, its impact on the environment, the emission of CO2 gases. So the study, the LCA study, is key for the industry to understand the actual impact. I think we can come up, maybe we can face some surprises, positive or negative, but we have to do it. We have to do it. And I think that is very important because, once again, we have to prove what we're confirming. If I say that Alpaca is friendly with environment, yes, but how? How is it? How do you prove it? Where is the data? So that's very important. Again, I want to thank each one of the presenters for their time, and Alberto and Celso for your commentaries, and I'm giving the end to this meeting. We want to thank the public who is here, evidently our presenters, panelists, and our moderator. And I would like to invite you, please, to stand up and get close to the edge to be able to take the official photograph. Meanwhile, I want to remind you that tomorrow, Thursday, at 9 o'clock in this auditorium, there's progress of RAS and perspectives of the MMS. And at 11:30 here also, we have the transmission of the